Link TV presents Mosaic World News from the Middle East. Here are today's top stories.
Al-Assad's regime suffers a major blow as blast kills top Syrian officials. Early elections loom as Kadima quits Israeli ruling coalition. And human rights organizations welcome the appointment of a UN Special Rapporteur for Eritrea. Mosaic, world news from the Middle East, begins now.
A severe blow to security in the heart of the Syrian capital, Damascus, led to the death of the chairman of the crisis cell, General Hassan Turkmeni, Defense Minister Dawood Rajha, and his aide, Asif Shaukat, the Syrian president's brother-in-law. In addition, top military and security officials were injured.
Wednesday morning was a normal day on Syrian TV. It was like every other day of the Syrian crisis, which has been ongoing for a year and a half, until the scene changed.
We just received news of a terrorist bombing that targeted the National Security Building in Damascus.
At the National Security Building, the crisis cell meets on a daily basis. It has led the country since the beginning of the mobilization. The National Security Building is located in the neighborhood of Al-Rawda, between the areas of Abu Romani and Al-Maliki, where many embassies and government facilities are found. It is a neighborhood near the presidential palace that is described as the Security Triangle. The security cell consists of General Hassan Turkmeni, Brigadier Mohammed al-Shar, General Dawood Rajha, Brigadier Asif Shaukat, Mohammed Said Bakhtien, General Ali Mamluk, Colonel Hafez Mamluk, Brigadier Mohammed Dib Zaitoun, Brigadier Jamil Hassan, Brigadier Abdul Fattah Qudsiya, and Hisham Bakhtiar. In a small conference room no wider than 3 meters, the security circle, consisting of military and intelligence leaders, or Syria's generals, met around a table. Information indicates that one of the security leader's guards was wearing an explosive belt, and he blew himself up inside the hall.
The explosion led to the death of General Dawood Abdullah Rajha, Deputy Chief of the Military and Armed Forces, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Defence, and Brigadier Asif Shaukat, Deputy of the Defence Minister. Also, a number of participants were injured.
The Free Syrian Army definitely claims responsibility for this operation that was executed against this regime. We had previously vowed to move the battle to Damascus to stop the massacres that this regime is committing against the people.
Syrian leadership hurried to avoid the consequences of these deaths by appointing Brigadier Fahad Jassim al-Freij as defense minister.
We count those who fell as martyrs for the sake of the pride and dignity of the state. We insist that our military men will not be deterred by this cowardly terrorist attack from continuing their sacred work, tracking the remnants of these criminal terrorist gangs, and amputating any hand that reaches out with the aim of harming the country and its citizens.
Later, Syrian state TV announced the death of Assistant to the Vice President, General Hassan Turkmeni, as unconfirmed news circulated concerning the death of the Interior Minister due to the injuries he sustained. At that time, Syrian state TV confirmed that the Interior Minister had survived.
All of the countries that have sent even one bullet, not a shipment of weapons, one bullet, are responsible for what happened today. And everyone who has sent even $1 to Syria is responsible for every drop of blood spilled on Syrian land. They are responsible, and they will be held accountable, even if they live in their palaces, in their capitals, and even if they are hiding behind their army or behind other armies.
An opposition group called Liwa, or Islam Brigades, also announced on its Facebook page its responsibility in the targeting of the National Security Office, which includes the Office of Crisis Management in the capital, Damascus.
Hours after the withdrawal of the Kadima party from the Israeli government, Israeli Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman vowed to stay in the coalition, despite differences with the Prime Minister over proposals to change the draft law to include ultra-Orthodox Jews in the army. The disagreement over the draft law is what prompted the Kadima party to withdraw from the coalition, in a move that may lead to early parliamentary elections in Israel. Our correspondent, Sharuk Assad, reports from occupied Jerusalem.
This was the quickest collapse of the largest coalition in the history of Israel. This comes after the Kadima party withdrew from the Netanyahu-led government without achieving its specific goals, notably the revival of the peace process with the Palestinians and the expansion of the draft law mandating that ultra-Orthodox Jews serve in the Israeli military.
This government has failed to launch a political process with the Palestinians. It also failed to enact a new draft law for ultra-Orthodox Jews.
Netanyahu is keeping one eye on the current government and the other on early elections by reaching out to ultra-Orthodox Jews who receive money under the pretext of enrolling in religious schools in a bid to avoid being drafted in the army. The religious groups represent a majority in Israel that Netanyahu depends on, similar to his dependence on the settlers who continue to build settlements in Jerusalem and the West Bank, which was the main reason for the collapse of negotiations.
It's clear that the Likud party is bowing more and more to pressure from the Israeli right and far-right parties. Likud's main supporters come from the far right and the religious extremists.
These are the main reasons that appear on the surface, but down below, there are a number of personal reasons behind the collapse of the coalition. Shaul Mofaz is eyeing the upcoming elections and is seeking to secure a position by proposing secular ideology. Amid all this, Israeli officials seem to have no time to explore ways to resume the peace process with the Palestinians. Israel is heading towards early elections, most likely in February. Netanyahu has a better chance to win, especially after pleasing and securing the support of right-wing and religious extremists, which comprise the majority of Israeli society. Sharuk Assad, Dubai TV, occupied Jerusalem.
This just in, a short time ago, prominent Ashkenazi rabbi Yosef Shalom Eliezers passed away at Shaare Zedek Hospital here in Jerusalem at the age of 102. Rabbi Eliezers was considered to be the chief halachic authority. In other news, the government coalition has crumbled over the issue of universal draft, and political uncertainty is the only thing that appears to be certain. Joining us now to discuss the latest developments is political pundit Mitchell Barak of Kivun Research. Good evening, Mitchell.
Good evening. How are you?
All right, before we start with the politics, since we've just been informed about the rabbi's passing, he was known to wield a great deal of influence in a wide circle of, a wide spectrum. So will his passing, do you expect, have any impact on the political situation here in Israel?
Well, I think it will. First of all, it's a great loss to the Jewish people. Rabbi Eliezers was a great decider, someone who understood Jewish law and the future of the Jewish people. And I think it was, in general, is a great loss to the Jewish people. But as far as politically, he was really the head, or was in charge of the Lithuanian ultra-Orthodox parties, the Agudat Yisrael party and the Degel HaTorah party, which formed into that, and that's a block of seats. And the Shas party also looked to him for what he would say, meaning whatever he said, they would follow in, and the Shas people would also be interested in what he had to say, even though they follow the Sephardic chief authority, who's Rabbi Ovadia Yosef.
Let's talk about the Shas faction briefly, and then right now it remains in the coalition, but the Shas party has already expressed a great deal of dissatisfaction, both with Shaul Mofaz, the head of Kadima, but as well as the Prime Minister, Netanyahu. How likely is it, in your view, that any kind of a compromise can be reached over the Tal law?
Well, I think they're going to be forced to reach a compromise. The question is, what is it going to be? I think the problem with the negotiations up until now is that Kadima was coming into the negotiations and at some point realized that their rank-and-file supporters, most of whom have already eroded or collapsed, want a really hard-line stance that there's no compromise.
Right.
And as we've heard from some of the speakers before and from other people, you can't change what's been going on for 64 years in 1 week or 1 month and whatever. And it's a group, the ultra-Orthodox, the Haredim, are very resistant to change in general, very resistant to changing their lifestyle and so forth. So it's something that has to come, to force it is not going to lead to anything positive, but to come to some type of compromise, that's the path that Prime Minister Netanyahu wants, and I think at the end of the day that's what he'll achieve.
Okay, well, having said that, which makes sense, you can't make this drastic change overnight, there were still 2 weeks left before the expiration of the Tal law. So therefore, the bolting of the coalition by the head of Kadima, Shaul Mofaz, did he just jump ship too quickly? Should he have stuck it out the next 2 weeks and at least tried?
Well, he's really started the election campaign now, and he realizes that he can't compromise and still keep his supporters at this point. So he's had to say that, you know, equal service for everyone, there's no discounts for anyone, and we can't agree to it. Whereas the Likud seemed to go into this negotiation, first with the Plessner Committee and then with the direct negotiations between Minister Ya'alon and member of Knesset Plessner. They went into the negotiations, at least the Likud, trying to find some type of compromise that will work for the Likud electorate, work for the Kadima electorate, and what the Prime Minister was looking at was the country as a whole.
Several Eritrean human rights organizations have welcomed a resolution by the UN Human Rights Council, the HRC, to appoint a special commissioner for Eritrea. The Council issued the resolution during its 20th session. In a statement that the BBC obtained a copy of, the organization said that the resolution shows the growing concern over the state of human rights violations in Eritrea. The organizations urged the HRC to make braver decisions in order to deal with such dangerous violations.
This is how life appears in the Eritrean capital, Asmara, completely calm and normal. Eritrea, which has an area of 118 square kilometers and a population of 4 million, sits on a great wealth of natural resources and owns many islands overlooking the Red Sea, with the coastal line reaching nearly 1,000 kilometers. Since its independence from Ethiopia in 1993, Eritrea has been ruled by Isaias Afwerki. The country seldom makes international headlines, except with regard to its political and border conflicts with neighboring countries, or its alleged intervention in Somalia and support for the armed Al-Shabaab militant group. This makes Eritrea a semi-isolated country that keeps to itself, according to some. The opposition accuses the regime of being one of the last radical and totalitarian systems in the world. The UN Human Rights Council has recently unveiled what's being described as a miserable state of human rights in the country. In a rare resolution, the HRC condemned the wide-scale and systematic violation of human rights and fundamental freedoms by Eritrean authorities. The violations include executions outside the judicial system, random acts of execution, enforced disappearances, systematic torture, indiscriminate detention, solitary confinement, as well as inhumane and insulting imprisonment conditions. The HRC also criticized the severe restrictions on the freedoms of expression and opinion, as well as the freedoms of the press, religion, association, gathering, and assembly. The violations also include the detention of journalists and human rights activists, as well as political reformists, clergymen, and experts. The Council also condemned the mandatory recruitment of citizens for unspecified periods of time in the national service. The policy led to forcing minors to join the army, as well as threatening and detaining families of those suspected of deserting the national service. The HRC called on the Eritrean government to immediately end all forms of indiscriminate detention, including torture and inhumane punishment. The Council also called for the release of all political prisoners and for the formation of an independent judicial system. In order to monitor these issues, the Council decided to appoint a special commissioner in Eritrea. His name is yet to be announced. The decision was largely welcomed by the Eritrean opposition. The government of Asmara will likely welcome the resolution. However, observers expressed doubt over the ability of President Afwerki's regime to meet the requirements necessary for the implementation of such a resolution. Anwar Alansi, BBC.
Of the U.S.-led forces crashes in western Afghanistan. NATO says 2 of the soldiers are injured. No other information released about the crash at this point. U.S.-led forces say the incident is under investigation. Meanwhile, NATO says 3 soldiers are dead following separate attacks. 2 died in eastern part of Afghanistan. The other was killed in an attack in the south. Nationality of the dead soldiers have not been released as of yet. Casualties among U.S.-led troops are mounting as Taliban is trying to regain lost ground. So far this year, over 240 U.S.-led forces have been killed, most of them American. Meanwhile, U.S.-led war supplies under attack. Close to 24 fuel tankers have been destroyed in northern Afghanistan. The fuel trucks traveled all the way from neighboring Uzbekistan. They were parked for a rest stop in the Samangan province when a magnetic bomb attached to a truck sent them up in a massive fireball. As many as 22 tankers are said to have been destroyed. The U.S. was forced to switch some logistics to go through Uzbekistan. This after Pakistan closed its borders following a U.S.-led deadly airstrike on its troops 7 months ago. Islamabad has only recently reopened its borders with Afghanistan to allow NATO supply trucks through. A bomb explosion in Pakistan rips through a bus and kills over a dozen people. The blast happened in the northwestern Orakzai tribal district on the Afghan border. 14 people have been reported dead so far, including women and children. The bomb went off near a bus that was carrying an entire family of Shias. Officials blame the attack on militants. Violent assaults on Shias in Pakistan have been on the rise over the past years. Majority of the raids have targeted the Hazara ethnic group in the southern province of Balochistan. Let's continue with the news. A population of over 200,000 Muslims in the capital of Greece, Athens, is without a mosque. Now, Muslims, because of that, are complaining of repeated attacks when trying to practice their religion. Athens, which is known as the Western cradle of democracy and civilization, is the only European capital without a mosque. Muslims are forced to gather and pray in cafes, basements, garages, and old warehouses. The decision of the Greek government seems to be targeted specifically at Muslims, since followers of other religious beliefs, including Jews, Buddhists, and Hindus, have been allowed to build their own places of worships.
The Supreme Commissioner in Libya announced that the National Forces Alliance headed the election results of the National General Conference after receiving 39 seats out of the 80 seats dedicated to the lists. However, no party was able to obtain a majority in the National Assembly, which consists of 200 seats.
To the rhythm of the national anthem, the curtain was raised on the celebration announcing Libya's election results, which revealed a partial victory for the National Forces Alliance, which won 39 seats, versus 17 seats for the Islamic Freedom and Development Party. The remainder of the seats, which were dedicated to the lists, were distributed between 19 political entities.
The National Forces Alliance has obtained 39 seats. The Freedom and Development Party obtained 17 seats. The National Front Party obtained 3 seats.
The announcement of these results are not final, and 14 days were allotted as a time period to present appeals for review by specialized commissions.
If an appeal is presented in the form of a minor complaint, it will be handled by the legal committee that is available at every electoral district. If it was a major complaint and not within the jurisdiction of the legal committees, it will be taken to the district attorney's office. If it was a significant complaint, then it will be taken to the district court, and a judge will decide positively or negatively.
Political parties praise the accomplishment of just holding elections, which represent the first step on the path to a democratic transition.
Our ability to hold these elections is considered an accomplishment, and with help from God and the efforts of our youths, our government, our transitional council and our real rebels, the elections were successful. This is a great accomplishment.
Amidst the feelings of pride, alongside the memories of the revolution, and looking into the dawn of change that has begun to take form, Libyans stand at a historic turn on the path to rebuild a modern country and construct a democratic system. By announcing the preliminary results of the first election, Libyans have overcome an important phase, the transition from a revolutionary period to the path of statehood. They are waiting to hold the first session of the National General Conference with a transfer of power to the first elected legislative assembly in the history of modern Libya.
The Arab League decided to form an international investigation committee to reveal the circumstances surrounding the martyrdom of President Yasser Arafat, aiming to collect information and form an Arab stance regarding this matter.
The Arab League called for the formation of an international committee to investigate the circumstances of the death of President Yasser Arafat, who died in 2004, to try to confirm that he was killed by poisoning with a radioactive substance.
It is important to form an international investigation committee to prepare a complete dossier regarding this matter. The case will be presented to the Ministerial Committee in the next meeting. Then the committee will issue a recommendation to the UN to form an international investigation committee over the case.
The Arab League held an urgent meeting for its members and called on Arab countries to contribute by providing the support and facilities to conduct the investigation. The League also condemned and criminalized the group behind the killing of late leader Yasser Arafat.
All accusatory fingers point to Israel. The committees that were formed by the Palestinian Authority did their work. It's not complete, and all of it point fingers to Israel. Additionally, the National Palestinian Authority will provide the required information, statements, and conclusions of its investigations.
Although opening the case brings this sad scene of the mysterious death of leader Yasser Arafat back to mind, it assures that the truth will be unveiled no matter how much time passes. And there must be a day for all injustices to be visited upon their perpetrators. The Arab League opened the file of the killing of the late leader Yasser Arafat in an urgent meeting for its members. It said it will take legal action in international courts. And the question is, if the case really is opened, will the Arabs be able to prevent the many hands trying to close it immediately?
The views expressed on Mosaic are from contributing broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible by grants from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, the Wincoat Foundation, the Firedoll Foundation, and by support of viewers like you. Thank you. Watch Mosaic World News online. Stay up to date with breaking news, read our blog, get transcripts of past shows, and more at linktv.org/mosaic. Airwaves, a global channel of uncompromising stories, world news, documentaries, entertainment, and culture. Link TV, connecting you to the world. For more information, visit linktv.org.